It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sport. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed it does, and great to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. We will be joined by Andrew Marchand a little later on in the program, sports media columnist over at The Athletic. We have NBA conference final predictions to get to, some NFL coaching talk. But we start things out in the NHL. There he is, the man with a plan. The great Dennis Bernstein of thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio, hangs out with us to help preview the conference finals. And look, if anything is an indicator of the fact that nobody has any clue who's going to win the Stanley Cup final, it's Vegas putting out odds that say Florida Panthers plus 240, the Edmonton Oilers plus 240, the Dallas Stars plus 280, and the Carolina Hurricanes plus 300. That's basically Vegas saying, we have no idea who's going to win either.
That's why the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best, because you don't know. Who knew? Who knew Edmonton over Vegas in 5 and made it look easy?
You certainly didn't. Neither did I.
All four can win at this point in time, Jason, without a question.
How do you handicap this thing when you look at these 4 teams, Dennis?
It's hard.
It's
me. Hard because you could say Edmonton's won 8 out of 9. Right, and and it looks like Skinner's okay, and they're going to get back at home at some point. So maybe you lean towards them, but depends what you think. The best goaltender left in the playoffs is Bobrovsky, without question. He's won before, and you saw him came up big again when they needed him. But I can make a case for every single team, Jason. So yeah, it's a toss-up. It's not maybe the biggest markets the NHL would want for the Final Four, but other than that, it should be highly competitive.
Is there a dream scenario for the NHL out of these 4, though? I mean, what would be the matchup that is most appealing? Is it Edmonton? Would it be Edmonton and Florida? A rematch? What do you?
No. I think if you want a big market, and you want Dallas in, right? So you'd want Dallas, Florida, maybe, because the travel wouldn't be as arduous as. My partner, Dave Pagnot, at the fourth period, when we did Edmonton to Florida last year, after game 2, there were storms. It took him 30 hours to get to Edmonton from Fort Lauderdale. So I don't think anybody wants that travel. So I think for the sake of the teams, maybe a 3-hour flight. But there is no dream matchup at this point, Jason, because there's no L.A., there's no New York, there's no Chicago, there's no big market, even though Dallas is a big market. I would say the most compelling one might be the rematch. But other than that, nothing really strikes at me at this point.
Dennis, we talk so much about these new player contracts and the cap every single season, sure. But the fact of the matter remains that depth matters, and I think every year in the Stanley Cup playoffs, we see that play out more and more so much so that there's never been a player who's made $10 million AAV who's won the Stanley Cup. By that quick math, right, that eliminates Dallas and Edmonton this year, even though Dallas took on the Rantanen contract mid-season.
Right.
Do you think that trend continues this year, or is this the first year that we're going to get a $10 million AAV Stanley Cup winner?
Yeah, Sam, I don't connect the dots to having a big-time player on your team and winning a Stanley Cup. So could it continue? Absolutely could continue, without question, because it is a team sport. And when your big guys don't score, you need your depth guys. And that's the challenge with Dallas. As great as Rantanen's played, Sam, they haven't got anything from anybody else. They haven't got anything from Robertson. They haven't got anything from Marchment. Sagan's came back from an injury, so they have to be careful. So I think that if you put the right amount of players around a $10 million player, you can win a Stanley Cup. It hasn't happened in Edmonton, obviously, and they have 2 $10 million players and maybe a third with Bouchard. But I don't connect it. You know what? It's really hard to win the Stanley Cup, regardless of how much you pay players or who you pay. It's just very difficult, Sam.
Is the argument for Edmonton in that series against Dallas that we didn't even necessarily see the best of Connor McDavid in that series against the Golden Knights?
Yeah, or Leon. Leon was a defensive presence in the Golden Knights series. He shut down Jack Eichel. So yeah, at some point in time, they're going to wreck a series. There's only 2 series left for them. The first 2, they won with their depth. The Edmonton Oilers run, Jason, hasn't been about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. It's been about Corey Perry at 40 years old. And Evander Kane not playing all season, coming back and being an impact player. John Klingberg, who I think some people thought was retired, came back from injury. And now Skinner's back on track. So it's been their depth. The thing that we thought was the weakness of the Oilers has become their strength in the first 2 rounds. But I think at some point, one of those 2 players, either Leon or Connor, is going to have to step up, have a big series, record series, and then hopefully win their first Stanley Cup championship.
Could I ask you one question that looks backwards real quick? And that is about Toronto and just the heartache for that city. Yeah. To win Game 6 on the road in Florida the way they did, only to come home and just be destroyed, and never really be in that game after the first period. To have 6 hung on you the way they did. Yeah. Just how devastating was that for that franchise?
Well, it was
and
defining
that fan
moment.
Base.
It was the defining moment until the next defining moment. Now, doesn't mean there's going to be major change. Yeah, I think Mitchell Marner's done in Toronto. Right? I just think he's done. He's done with the market. He's done with the fans. He's done with the media. And he'll move on. He'll get paid $14 million a year. So it is devastating, but it's no more. Is it more devastating than if you're a Sabres fan and haven't made the playoffs in 13 years? Or Detroit, who hasn't made it in 8 years? I don't think it's any more devastating. Sure, it is. Your expectations are there. You're paying like 4 players a lot of money. But it's no. There are franchises that never win a Stanley Cup, like San Jose and Vancouver. Is that any more devastating? No, it isn't. At least this team's got a shot in there. It's the anticipation. It's the media-driven hype of that market where top-heavy teams, Jason, don't win. We just talked about death with Sam. Top-heavy teams don't win. Their bottom 6 wasn't good enough. They didn't do anything in this series, and that's why they lost in 7, although they weren't the better team. So it can't be that devastating. It wasn't like, you were some heavy favored over the Columbus Blue Jackets and you lost in the Game 7. Florida was the better team. They showed it. So don't be that upset that you weren't the best team in the league this year. Now you got to go back to the drawing board if it's Shanahan or Trey Living or whoever they want to put in there and make better decisions about how you surround your star players.
Who do you give the edge to in that Eastern Conference Finals real quick, Dennis? Is it the rested Carolina Hurricanes or is it the Florida Panthers with this momentum of coming off a Game 7 victory where they absolutely stepped on the throat, as we were just talking about, of the Toronto Maple Leafs in about 5 minutes?
I don't think there's a lot of momentum for Florida because they played so poorly in Game 6 at home. I go, okay, so I don't believe that momentum jumps from series to series. It's an entirely different series. I really like Carolina here. Like, I know that, look, on paper, Florida's probably the better team. Like, they had the better goaltender, but I just like the way Carolina's playing. If they're going to play hockey, they'll play in the first 2 rounds. Nobody's going to beat them because they don't give up much. And so this is, again, a very low-scoring series that if you go back to, I think, 2 years ago when Rod said we got swept, but it felt like we won all 4 games. It's going to be those type of games, Sam. So I give Carolina a legit shot to come out as they do all 4 teams to win the Cup. So they are not, if they're an underdog, they're the slightest of underdogs, like Dallas would be a slight underdog in the West.
Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM, NHL Radio. You have been Johnny on the spot throughout this postseason. We always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for the time.
We're coming back. More sports wrap. We've got a NBA Conference Finals preview next. Welcome back to the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, Andrew Marchand, sports media columnist for The Athletic. He'll hang out with us, give us some thoughts on what took place at the television upfronts, the media upfronts, particularly on the sports side, last week in New York. Looking forward to getting his insights. My go-to guy when it comes to all things sports media. Sam Yarnell hangs out with us on the show. And after our conversation with Dennis Bernstein on hockey, we shift gears to the NBA. And I have to be honest, if you had asked me blindly, maybe I shouldn't be surprised. If you had asked me blindly, though, yesterday, to guess the odds to win the whole thing in the NBA, I don't know if I would have actually had the Knicks at number 2. Even though they beat the Celtics. Knowing now what we know about the Celtics, Jaylen Brown, the torn meniscus, and I know Tatum got hurt at the end of Game 4, and the Knicks were already winning that game and all that, but I still wouldn't have had the Knicks probably number 2. Or I don't know. But when I looked and saw the Knicks, so for people that don't know, the Thunder are minus 185 to win the NBA championship. The Knicks are plus 500. So 5-1. The Timberwolves are 6-1, and the Pacers are plus 750 to win the NBA championship. What do you make of those odds, Sam, when you look at those numbers?
Well, to me, Jason, I think we've gotten to a point where the sports books are just happy that the Celtics are eliminated. I think that the sports books are kind of throwing around these numbers, and they've frankly moved. What you just read is not what they were when Game 7 ended on Sunday or Saturday or whatever it was. They're shifting willy-nilly because all the liability that these sports books had in the Boston Celtics, they've now eliminated. So obviously you've got to make the Thunder because that's your second biggest liability pre-Tatum injury, right? Going into the playoffs, the Thunder were your second biggest liability. That's going to kind of become a problem as you see, and that's why you'll start to see, especially in the Western Conference Finals, but even, assuming they get to the finals, you're going to see really big minus numbers on the Oklahoma City Thunder throughout because sportsbooks are holding them as liability from bets they've taken all season long, bets they've taken all throughout the playoffs, and then on top of that, bets they take throughout this series and the next series. On the other side, I do think that does present natural value in the opponents if you do find a way to think that they're going to win, specifically in the West, right? If you're looking at the Timberwolves, hey, if you think that Rudy Gobert can hold down the Hartenstein Holmgren combo, then yeah, there's 100% value in the Minnesota Timberwolves in a series where a lot of people think that Chet Holmgren could be the difference maker. Not to say that he'd be the catalyst for either team or for anything to happen, but he could be what wins or loses Oklahoma City this series. In the East, Jason, listen, the Knicks to me, we've gotten to a point where neither team involved in this conference finals is one that, from a sports betting perspective, anyone really had serious, money on going into the playoffs or throughout the regular season. So to me, I think the East is so much more variable from a sportsbook perspective in that you could see a bunch of different numbers throughout this series and you could get incredible value now. And I think you could also probably get incredible value game to game as this series goes on.
Is there a particular bet when it comes to the Eastern Conference Final that you like? Because I'm looking at Knicks minus 144, Pacers plus 122. There's no value either way, really, in terms of that. But is there something, whether it be the correct score of the series, whether it be the total games in the series? I mean, Knicks 4-2 at plus 590. I kind of like that. That's if there's a number I like. If you like the Knicks to win the series, I don't think 4-2 is that outlandish. To be able to get that at almost 6-1, I don't think that's crazy.
So there's a prop out there for conference finals round leaders, right, in points.
Okay.
And what we've been talking about all playoffs, right, is that for the Knicks to cement themselves as real NBA legitimate title contenders, Jalen Brunson's got to have that game or that set of games. In a series where I do think it could go long, especially I think it could go longer than the Western Conference Finals, which I think may be the more spicy take out of everything I'm about to say. But Jalen Brunson to lead the conference finals in scoring at plus 180 doesn't seem like a horrible price to me, just because, again, that is the guy who is their guy in the last 5 to 8 minutes of every single basketball game. He's the guy with the ball in his hands, whether they're down, whether they're up. He's the one putting it away or he's the one bringing them back into it. Whereas you look at these other teams and yeah, Shea's great, but they've been giving the ball elsewhere late in games. And yeah, Ant's great, but is he really going to get it done throughout 48 minutes of a game through 6 games of a series? No, Jalen Brunson to me is that guy. I think he could lead the conference finals in points. I'll take that at plus 180.
I like that. That's a really interesting number. All right, real quick here. Who do you like? Well, not real quick. We got a couple minutes. Who do you like to win both series? Because I actually have two different things. I have who I like to win the series, and then I have what I think is the best bet. And they're actually two different things. Because if you ask me, I think the Knicks beat the Pacers, and I think the Thunder beat the T-Wolves. But if you ask me from a betting standpoint, I'm betting the T-Wolves at 3-1.
Right. So I agree with you wholeheartedly in that. I do think
if you agree with me, I know I'm getting better at this thing.
No, because again, and this is what I was trying to say before, like you're going to see so much fluidity in these markets in a conference finals where, again, there's one team that's holding an ounce of liability. There's not really anything. You're going to see markets fluctuate left and right. So if you think there's an edge, even to a point where the number will get 100 cents better, $1 better by the end of next game, bet it now, and then eventually you'll be able to bet the other side. I think that when we get into series betting and things like that, on a Minnesota side, right? Even if you do bet them at plus 265 and they lose game one and go to 4-1, you can either bet them in game two or even bet the Thunder in game two, and you'll still wind up profitable. It's a great way to look at these series, especially when you've got a Western Conference Finals like we do this year, Jason.
All right, so you're picking the Knicks?
Dang, you were really gonna let me
come on,
you
quick.
All right, Knicks and Thunder, fine.
But you'd bet the T-Wolves.
But I bet the T-Wolves.
All right, we're going.
And probably
we're simpatico.
the Pacers too.
We're simpatico. It's beautiful. Andrew Marchand joins us next. Welcome back to the show. We got a lot to talk about from the world of sports media. The media upfronts were held. The TV upfronts were held last week in New York, and I wanted to get this guy on badly. And he said, I am too busy, don't even bother talking to me during the week of media upfronts. And it's this guy, Andrew Marchand, who does a terrific job over at The Athletic. Their sports media columnist. He also does a couple of podcasts. You could sign up for him at andrewmarchand.com. He's got twice a week podcasts. Go and sign up for them there on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Andrew, appreciate it. Give me the top line, if you were to come up with one, the big headline for you coming out of the upfronts when it comes to sports media. What would it be?
I think that sports media dominated the upfronts. If you went to the upfronts at NBC, ABC, Fox, CBS used to do them, doesn't do them anymore, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even, entertainment ruled the roost. All the new shows, what they thought were going to be hits, what were already hits. Now it's sports. I mean, you look at Disney, for example, Bob Iger comes on. He's joined by Patrick Mahomes and Saquon Barkley. Then the Mannings came on and did a performance, and they kind of were the theme throughout. And that's just one example. So I think the big headline, the dominance of sports and sports programming in a digital world where people watch their entertainment on Netflix and other entities for their shows, Max, etc. But for the networks and even the new emerging, Netflix had Roger Goodell there, YouTube had Goodell there. Sports also is a big part of it.
Why is that? Why has sports overtaken entertainment in that regard? What's led to that shift?
Ultimately, it's Netflix and YouTube. I think when you or I even think back to when we were younger, and I think I'm a little bit older than you are, but Thursday nights, Seinfeld, that's where you watch Seinfeld, and then it was NBC. It previewed and promoted the NBA with Michael Jordan on Saturday and Sundays, and that was kind of the formula. Nowadays, most of us, even if you like a show that's on a network, you watch it a lot of times through streaming. And so, that's shifted. So what works in a live environment? Sports and news. And so those are the things that are emphasized. And then they're all trying to, we talk about the traditional players, and they're all into streaming. ESPN announced their direct-to-consumer product that will be what they called unlimited, which you get everything without a cable subscription of ESPN for $30 a month. You can add it for $5 more. You can get Hulu and Disney Plus with it. They have it. Peacock, NBC, Paramount Plus with CBS, and Fox just announced their entrance into streaming on a subscription base with Fox One.
What tells you, is there any indicator out there, because you brought up the ESPN DTC, is there any indicator, is there something we can point to that tells us the consumer is ready to go out and start paying $30 a month on top of all the other subscriptions we have out there? Is there something that tells us that there is this paradigm shift that people are ready for, that they're going to go out and dole out $30 a month or $35 or whatever it winds up being, as you were saying, for ESPN on this sort of untethered basis?
Yeah, I think the misnomer for when these big companies make these huge moves, and you're talking about Disney and ESPN, which are, ESPN's been the most dominant sports network for decades now. I think there always is this inclination to think that tomorrow they're going to have 15, 20, 30, 40 million subscribers. And that's not how it works. I think if you're ESPN, you do need to get in this game because you need to have an alternative for younger people who are never going to get cable, which is how ESPN became so dominant. It was charging everyone on basic cable at this point, $10, $11 per month, even if they didn't watch it. It's a tremendous business. Adding with advertising, they're making, in revenue more than $1 billion a month, and at some points way more than that. So what a business model. So you need to be there, and you need to give that alternative. And what they're trying to do is, you look at the cable model, in 2011, they had 100 million subscribers. Now, the last report from Nielsen, towards the end of last year, they're in the $65 million range. It's probably going to go down the next time those numbers come up. So what do they first need to do? They need to stop the bleeding. They need to level it out. And whatever that next number is, let's say it's 60 or 55, whatever it is, that keep it there and then start moving up. So how do you move up? Well, you offer it a different way. And also, when you price it that way, if you're someone like me who has Spectrum, I have cable, so I get ESPN through Spectrum. I have all the, my job's a little bit different. Not everyone needs this, but you'll get this ESPN app. It'll be just like if you just subscribe without cable. So you'll get all these, and they want you to go to ESPN as your I want to watch sports. Let me go to ESPN. Not only does it have the linear channel programming, it has all this extra programming, which, they just did a Rich Eisen deal that's not going to be on the traditional channels like ESPN or ESPN2 or News or ESPNU. It's just going to be a play on direct-to-consumer through Disney Plus, through ESPN Plus, and then on the mothership for all their programming in the fall on ESPN. And then it's not official yet, but expected to be the anchor on ESPN Radio. So the business is changing. They're trying to change with it. But to say that there's 10 million people tomorrow who are going to sign up, I mean, the question is, how many people who want ESPN right now don't have it? And you have to think that's kind of a small number because it just, and especially at $30, that somehow you don't have ESPN right now and you want ESPN, but you got to have that alternative. So it does make sense. I thought they priced it at a reasonable number. It's a little high, but in a subscription game, you really want to be a little bit higher than what you think, because it just allows you to, those multiples become better. If you're at $19.99, to compare it to $29.99, that $10 is basically, you can not get one out of those four people and still bring in the same amount of subscription revenue. But they're also trying to get a big base for advertising, and so it's a needle that they're trying to thread.
Andrew Marchand is hanging out with us on the show, sports media columnist. He does a terrific job over at The Athletic. He's also got a couple of podcasts you could sign up for over at andrewmarchand.com. Go and do that right now. We're going to do one more segment with him because I got a couple of questions to ask him off of that ESPN direct-to-consumer product. And he mentioned Rich Eisen as well, who's jumping over from his show on Roku over to ESPN. Couple more questions for Andrew Marchand on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to do as we continue on Sports Wrap. Welcome back to the show. Talking with Andrew Marchand, who does a terrific job on all things sports media. He was at the TV upfronts last week in New York, so we're getting a full recap on everything we missed. Especially from the world of sports and television and streaming and all of those things that go together. You mentioned Rich Eisen rejoining ESPN after 20 plus years away. He left for NFL Network, 2002, 2003, something like that. He left for NFL Network and went off and did his own thing and has been very successful in that regard. How this plays in, because they announce he's going over. And, of course, there's the talk that he's going into the same time slot as Pat McAfee, so naturally there's this jump to a conclusion from some people. Plus, you get McAfee, a day or two before putting out this vague, sort of innocuous post on his X feed talking about turning the page and, life has different chapters. Nobody knows what it means. Is it referring to his WWE career? Is it referring to his ESPN career? Was this a shot across the bow, or is this simply them just trying to pile on as much content and bring as much value to the DTC product as possible? Or is it them saying, we have enough assets that if we want to offload McAfee when his contract is up and not have to pay out all this money to him and his team and his crew, that we can do that? Or is it potentially a combination of both, Andrew?
Yes. I'm just kidding. You said a lot there. So I would say that a couple of things here. I think it's not a shot across the bow. I reported in The Athletic that they had talks with Colin Cowherd, who ended up re-signing with Fox Sports and also kept his Volume business, which is his podcast business. They're trying to add as much programming as possible. They want Jason Page or anybody listening to think, I want some sports right now. At night, we're going to have the best games. During the day, we're going to have the best programming in terms of talk shows outside of the Jason Page show. Maybe they'll bring you in. But
never.
Never. So the
and I wouldn't go. And quite honestly, I wouldn't go if they offered.
Why?
Because I wouldn't sell out. I wouldn't sell out to that company.
Fair
never.
enough. So if so in this case though, I don't. Look, if Pat McAfee and ESPN, the idea that this is going to be some relationship like Chris Berman, is celebrating 40 years at ESPN, I will bet you any amount of money that there will be no 40th anniversary for Pat McAfee and ESPN. I would probably bet a significant amount there's no 10th anniversary of Pat McAfee at ESPN.
Will he wind up with a second contract? Because I don't think he does.
Yeah, I mean, his history is that he doesn't. So I would say,
and I don't think he needs them. As I said to you, we had a text exchange, and I won't go through the whole text exchange, but I said to you, I don't think he needs them. As much as I don't like him, he doesn't need them.
Yes and no. I mean, I do think you're right. He doesn't need them, but you can make a good amount of money on YouTube. You can do gambling deals. Your life's much more complicated when you do it that way, when you're the one who's in charge of your business fully, and you're not just receiving a check to do it. So, yes, could he do it? Yes, but it also gets more complicated. There's more issues that you have to deal with. So he's very popular.
He's bet on himself he's bet on himself before and won.
Yes, and I mean, I don't think it really works on linear TV. That's the one issue I would say. If you watch the show, it's a YouTube show that they put on linear TV. And so, that aspect doesn't necessarily work. But to answer your overall question, I don't think one has anything to do with the other. That said, if McAfee were to leave soon or, a year from now, is Rich Eisen set just to move in there? It does seem like a pretty easy placeholder. Yes, Eisen could move in there at some point. That is true, but it's not. We have Rich Eisen in the on-deck circle. This is all about ESPN DTC. It's also kind of a recommitment to radio that they've sort of ignored for a little while in terms of having big names and an anchor in there. And so could it work out the way you're saying? Of course, but I don't think that's what they're thinking.
All right, fair enough. What is going on with Ryan Clark and Robert Griffin III? And is this something that's threatening sort of Ryan Clark and his status at ESPN?
I mean, Ryan Clark, I think views himself perhaps a little differently than ESPN views Ryan Clark. I think ESPN views Ryan Clark as someone who's on their NFL shows. Ryan Clark kind of views himself, it seems, as someone who, commenting on everything, and sort of that Stephen A. Smith sort of role. Even though Stephen A. doesn't really get into, he gets into race and all that stuff. He doesn't fixate on that stuff. I think Ryan Clark, he made a big deal a year or two ago about his contract, which I don't think went over that great. They ended up re-signing him. I don't think it's a great look for him. I don't think getting in fights on social media really helps you. Again, I think if you're Ryan Clark, you're not Pat McAfee. You're not Stephen A. And so you might, he had a very good NFL career, and he's established himself at ESPN, but and maybe he's trying to achieve something, perhaps, become even bigger, make that, they all see the Stephen A. money. Everyone's aiming for that at these places. And so, but I don't know if he's going about it necessarily the right way. And he doesn't come across as fully likable, I would say.
Andrew Marchand is a senior columnist over at The Athletic. He does a terrific job on all things sports media. He's got 2 podcasts you can sign up for over at andrewmarchand.com. Andrew, I always appreciate you. Always great insights. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me on.
We're coming back. Odds and Ends wraps it up in about 10 minutes. But first, some NFL talk. Because there is a head coach who got paid on Monday, we learned, shortly after we finished putting the show to bed. Because it always happens right after we put the show to bed. Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, gets a big contract extension. And look, who could argue that it's well-deserved, Sam Yarnell? I mean, he led the team to a Super Bowl after much criticism, much, a lot of people in the media questioning sort of his methods and the way he went about it. A lot of people thought that, Nick Sirianni a year ago, I mean, if you even just think a year from where we are now, a year back from where we are now, there were people wondering whether Nick Sirianni would still be the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And now here he is, a Super Bowl champion and a nice lucrative deal to remain as the head coach. And again, it's well-deserved. I mean, to the victor goes the spoils, and he's got every right to sort of thump his chest right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think someone in the football community put it best to me, actually, with regard to the ongoing hearings or voting around the tush push and whether or not it'll be legalized. But it was like the best coaches and the best franchises find ways to win while working within and around the rules, right? And that is the entire premise around the tush push, which is Nick Sirianni's trademark, right? And I think it's conversation to be banned is a huge reason, a huge argument that Nick Sirianni had for this contract extension. He is doing innovative things, and that's what we look for out of the great coaches in football. Nick Sirianni is up there with the tops in the league right now. I don't think that there's any question about that. That guy has proven himself a winner, a guy who can make the right decisions for a football team down the stretch. Granted, he has a great GM behind him making a ton of genius moves, but he can take what that GM gives him and put it on the field just about as well as anybody else in the NFL.
Here's the thing I also wonder, and this isn't the larger question that I actually want to get to in this segment, but as I sit here and hear you talk about and wax poetic about Nick Sirianni, here's the thing I wonder. Are the Eagles built for, and again, and some of this is also being in the NFC, where there is not the hill to climb that you have in the AFC, where the level of competition and the parity of greatness in that conference is what it is. I wonder aloud if this version of the Eagles is built for a run like what we've seen the Chiefs do. Like, is this thing built for a run where they can win 3 in 5 years or 2 in 4 years? I'm not necessarily sure of that.
I don't think so. I don't think that anyone is pretending, however, like it is the case, just because obviously the Chiefs dynasty is one that you see once every 10 or 15 years in football, right? And the Eagles team isn't, it's just not constructed that way. It's not constructed the way these dynasties always are. I mean, go through the dynasties in the history of football, go all the way back to the first one with the Green Bay Packers, built around Bart Starr, go all the way to the most recent, in the New England Patriots dynasty, right? Built around Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes is the one who the Chiefs built their dynasty around. Before that, the greatest show on turf was built around Kurt Warner. So these dynasties need a legendary Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. I don't think anyone's pretending that Jalen Hurts is
exactly
that said, they also don't have the other pieces that are necessary around it, right? They don't have a revolving door where any running back can come in and have success in the system, as the Patriots did, as the Chiefs did. They have a clear-cut all-pro number one wide receiver, as the Patriots did not, as the Chiefs never really have. They don't have a go-to tight end, as the Patriots and Chiefs both did. They're not a dynasty-built team.
And also, I'll say this. How many defensive dynasties have you seen? You see offensive dynasties.
Sure.
You don't see defensive dynasties.
Well, I think there would be an argument to be made that the Patriots dynasty was a defensive one, but that said, it's not like
it's harder to make that argument when you have arguably the greatest quarterback of all time on your team. It's a little harder to make that argument.
True, and on the other side of that, right, even if you are making that argument, the argument of a defensive dynasty is centered around coaching, not so much as it is around the players, right? It's not, Darrelle Revis was never part of a defensive dynasty for the New York Jets, while being the hands-down best corner in the league for a decade plus.
One thing I want to finish this segment on. He's getting all this money. And we look at the top, paid coaches in the NFL, and this stuff changes every year. It's always, these things always go through cycles, like players in the league. If you had, if you had one game and your life depended on it, or you had one game and your career as a player depended on it, and you have one coach to coach that game, Sam, who are you taking right now, today? Who are you taking to coach that game?
Obviously, Dan Quinn. It's not close. I just need to win one game. I'm not worried about the rest of the season.
Really?
It's
Dan
Quinn. That guy has shown you nothing during his career except for the fact that he will do anything to win at the end of those 4 quarters. And he doesn't care about next week, and he doesn't care about last week. Give me Dan Quinn 6 ways to Sunday.
Really? Yeah, I don't know if that's, not sure that's where I'm going. But as I sat here and thought about it, standing in the shower this morning, a sight everybody wants to have emblazed in their head. As I thought about it today, I was like, can I really go with Andy Reid coming off what just happened against the Eagles, where he had no answers for that Eagles pass rush? Can I really go with Andy Reid right now, coming off that game? Sean McVay. I love Sean McVay. I'm a big Sean McVay guy. I can't go Dan Campbell. Hasn't shown he can win the big one yet. I don't have an answer. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Very cool stuff going on tomorrow. Chuck Todd, former moderator of Meet the Press, former NBC News chief political anchor, correspondent. He's going to hang out with me for the entire show. Sam's got the day off, so Chuck Todd will sit in the co-host chair and hang out with me for the entire show. We'll do all the usual sports stuff we do on the show. It's just going to be with Chuck Todd, who is a huge sports fan. This is something we've been looking forward to doing together. So Chuck Todd for the entire show tomorrow. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. If you are not a subscriber yet, what are you waiting for? Go and check out the podcast version of the show. It's the audio version of what we do every day here on the program. You can listen to it while you drive to work, while you're on the subway, while you're on the train, while you're on a plane, while you're taking a shower, while you're in bed, no matter what you're doing. Go and check out the podcast version of Sports Wrap, Monday through Friday, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon Podcasts, anywhere. you get your podcasts, go and get the show. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. It is awesome. You can watch Sports Wrap with Jason Page on YouTube every day. It's right there, commercial free. Every afternoon it's available. All you got to do is go and subscribe. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, our YouTube channel. It's free to do so. We also have Sports Wrap Shorts there. Clips from the show. Sometimes we even have clips that are not from the show. News breaks all the time, and we're here to bring it to you. Sports Wrap Shorts available on our Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. All right, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends. Oh, it's just me. And it's just Juan Soto not running hard out of the box. What are you doing, Juan Soto? Hits a ball off the green monster for the Mets last night in a game against the Red Sox and not running hard out of the box. And it isn't the first time that this has happened with Juan Soto where he hasn't run hard out of the box. His manager, Carlos Mendoza, was asked about it after the game, said he would talk to Juan Soto about it. The honeymoon is over for Mets fans with Juan Soto. The honeymoon's over with the media for Juan Soto. There it is. Juan slow-mo. Soto fails to bust it out of the box again and denies it's an issue after ugly loss. The back pages of the New York Post sports section. How is that, by the way? How is that the back page when let's get ready to rumble? And the fact that you've got Knicks Pacers getting ready to go in game one of these. Well, I guess because it doesn't start till Wednesday, they needed something to put on there for Tuesday. All right, fair enough. We'll see what happens there, though. And look, Soto's off to a mediocre start for the Mets, so it's obviously garnering some headlines, but kind of interesting to note that I think the only thing saving Juan Soto really right now is the fact that the Mets as a team are playing really well, because he really is off to a very mediocre start here. And the other thing helping him is the guys around him in the lineup, Lindor and Alonso, are playing really well. And I have said this before, you can certainly take what Soto means to that lineup, even though he's not necessarily performing at a level he would expect to perform to, and say, Alonso's getting better pitches as a result, and so is Francisco Lindor. All right, odds and ends. Flag football, yeah, it's coming to the Olympics in 2028 in Los Angeles, and it looks like the NFL is going to allow players to play flag football at the 2028 Olympics. There's a vote that's going to take place to allow NFL players to participate in flag football at league meetings in Minneapolis, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, and it is expected to pass. They need 24 of the team owners out of 32 to pass the measure. Now, look, here's the thing about this. Now, we can sit here and argue all day whether this is a good idea or not. All you need is one marquee player to get hurt in these Olympics. And this whole thing will go out the window and you'll never see NFL players playing in flag football again. But here's what I have to ask. This is a no-win situation. This is a no-win situation for, the United States Olympic Committee. It's a no-win situation for the NFL. Because if the United States ever lost in flag football to the rest of the world, when football is inherently an American sport, and I'm talking about American football. I'm not talking about rugby. I'm not talking about soccer. I'm talking about football. If the United States were ever to lose in flag football, we'd never live it down. I mean, it would be the most embarrassing of embarrassing losses if the United States were to lose in American football, as it's known. So I don't know what the proposition is or how it's a winning proposition to have the United States playing NFL players. We should be able to win this thing without having to play NFL players. We should be able to play collegiate players in this thing. We should be able to play Arena Football League players in this thing and still be able to win the flag football competition in the Olympics. Still, we're going to put our best out there on the grandest stage. I get it. The Olympics is such a huge stage, a lot of eyeballs watching, and the NFL obviously loves what it probably can do from a marketing standpoint, but Does the NFL really need it? Like I said, the first time a marquee player gets hurt, running with that flag hanging out of their shorts. It's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to Andrew Marchand, Dennis Bernstein, Sam Yarnell, you for watching. Chuck Todd on the show tomorrow. Kurt Heelan will hang out and talk some NBA as well. We'll see you then.